Welcome to the Hour of Empowerment. Today we are in Season 3, which is Organizational Development, and Topic 1, Communication, and we are in Season 3, Process, Steps, and Case Studies. As usual, let's revise what we discussed last week. Last week we talked about reality check, cross-cultural communication, how to mitigate culture shock, and also we checked if we have difficulties in embracing cross-cultural communication, and we talked about also the importance of active listening. As you can see, we took this reality check to see whether we have communication, effective communication, 1, poor, and 5, excellent. And we measured our communication ability in terms of communicating orally, written communication, listening skill, using stories in our communication, communicating using social media such as Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and so on. And also we measured our cross-cultural communication skill. I hope that you measured your communication skill based on these indicators, and now you know where you are, whether you are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. We also talked about how to mitigate culture shock. We said mitigate because we can't totally escape some forms of culture shock. We suggested the following steps to take in mitigating culture shock. First, understand the major cultural divides. And as we discussed last week, we can divide the world's cultures into 2 major categories: individual-based cultures and communal-based cultures. Second, study and research the culture we intend to cross. Third, take advices from people who know the culture you are trying to visit or cross. We also suggested some questions that may help us to understand whether we have some difficulties to embrace cross-cultural communication. These are the questions. 1, have you tried to loosen your accent? Here, I'm not talking about losing your culture or losing who you are. Here, I'm asking whether you have loosened your accent so that other people from other cultures could be able to understand you. So if you embrace multiculturalism and if you want to develop cross-cultural communication skill, you should loosen your accent when you communicate with people from other cultures. Second, do you use regional slang when you talk with people from a different dialect? Do you have friends from diverse cultures you hang out with? Have you acquainted yourself with the history of other cultures? Have you read the biographies of people who are not native to your culture? We also talked about active listening, and many relationships ruined because of lack of active listening. When people are asking why your relationship failed, they say, he doesn't listen to me, or she doesn't listen to me. When we have active listening, not only we succeed in a given instance, but also enable the relationship to continue. And also, the people who communicate with us, when they see that we are listening to them, they trust us, and also they want to continue relating with us. So it is very important to have active listening for your relationship to flourish and succeed. We asked this very important question: why do we not listen? Why we fail to listen? There are some reasons why we don't listen. Here are some of the reasons. First, we may be preoccupying ourselves with personal, pressing, and urgent matters. And because of that, we don't listen. Our heart is somewhere. Our mind is somewhere while we are communicating, while we are listening to someone. Second, we may be absorbed by what we would reply as soon as the speaker finishes. We may be engrossed with preconceived biases towards the speaker, his beliefs, or message. We may be distracted by external factors. We may be engaged with our emotion rather than our heart. We also asked an important question. How do we discipline ourselves to listen actively and save our relationships, increase our trustworthiness? The suggestions were, first, embrace listening. Second, respect and honor every individual. Here is a very powerful quotation from Brian McGill. He said that one of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. Third, train ourselves to listen consciously. Fourth, develop the ability to listen nature and our souls. Fifth, join organizations that may provide us opportunities to develop our communication and listening skills. Sixth, get feedback from people around you. Ask them whether you listen or not. Today we're going to talk about formation of communication. Communication is not all about talking, or it's not oratory, or even convincing the other person. And as many communication experts argue it that communication is not a one-way street. And therefore, there are three important components of communication. First, relate. Second, connect. Third, listen. In order for you to communicate with others, whether they are your family members or colleagues or partners, you need to understand the three important components of listening so that you may communicate and succeed in your relationship. Let's talk about relate. The first step of communication is relating. Until this relationship is established, it is impossible to have effective communication, because relationship is the key, the first key for effective communication. Think about it. You want to communicate with me. Without relating with me, knowing my telephone number or email address, you can't really communicate with me. So there should be a relationship before we start communicating. Therefore, if you want to be an empowered communicator in your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your community, you need to first understand that communication requires to relate. But a relationship is not enough to be an effective communicator. You need to connect with the people you are trying to communicate. I have been watching movies, FBI agents who are trying to manage hostage crisis, and whenever they have difficulties to convince the hostage taker to refrain from doing a hostile action, their bosses emphasize and tell them that focus and find a connection with the hostage taker, because it's impossible to convince him to refrain from acting in a very destructive ways without creating connection. But when we connect, not only be able to diffuse tensions in the case of hostage crisis, we could also be able to create a non-intimidating and trust-filled medium of communication. The last component, which is the third important component of communication, is listening. Listening is very critical for communication. Most importantly, listening is the key in the equation of effective communication. Communication without active listening is incomplete and imperfect. Therefore, listening is a key ingredient for effective communication. Now, you are somewhere in your communication. The next question you may ask is, what should I do to improve my communication skill? And I have suggested 5 steps. I call them the 5 A's. Audit your level of communication, ascertain your weakest spots, act on the weakest spots consciously, acquire feedback, assess your results. First, audit your level of communication. The first step to improve your communication skill is to know where you are. In order for you to take where you want to arrive and achieve your communication, you need first to know where you are, because you can't take yourself somewhere better without knowing from where to start. So the starting point is auditing your status, your situation, your current level of communication, and understand your level of competency. The second is ascertain your weakest spots. Once you know where you are, the next step should be asking this very important question, which is, what is keeping you from going to the next level? That is finding out the weak spots. And ask this very important question: what is sabotaging your effective communication the most? The next step is spots consciously. Once you know your weakest spots, what you should do? Have strategies, plans, and take some practical action. Even if these actions may be insignificant to begin with. The fourth step is asking feedback about your communication from the people around you, who are closer to you, who could be able to give you genuine and true and right kind of feedback. That is very important for your communication improvement. Ask your strengths, weaknesses, and also areas of improvements, so that you take your communication to the next level very quickly. The fifth step is assess your results. Stop and evaluate your progress. Yes, you know where you are right now. And also you know your weakest spots. Yes, you have strategies, plans. And also you have asked feedback from other people and you have been taking actions. The next question is, have you got results? You need to assess whether your weakest spots are improving, and also whether your strategies and plans are working or not, and whether they are delivering what you anticipate. If you're not happy with the results, then you go back and start from step 1. Now, let me give you 2 case studies of great communicators. Winston Churchill, a statesman, and Les Brown, a motivational speaker. First, let's talk about how great Winston Churchill was when he was communicating. He was a legendary orator, a prolific writer, artist, and he served the United Kingdom as a 2-term prime minister. He was an effective communicator, both orally and in written. His writing career began when he went to Cuba as a war correspondent for London's Daily Graphics. He wrote also for the Daily Telegraph and also for the Morning Post. His career as a politician began when he was in his 20s. And he quickly being recognized as an outspoken and energetic speaker. He joined the parliament and also took key ministerial positions. And he was in and out of office for decades before he became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Winston Churchill and his communication ability. For his success as a writer and statesman, communication played a great role. He was an articulate speaker, and his communication ability was used to the full when he led the United Kingdom during World War II. He inspired his fellow countrymen and women and rallied alliances, including the United States, in the fight against Nazi. He was a very close friend of the then United States President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Let me give you some of the powerful quotations of Winston Churchill and see how he was great in communicating his ideas and insights. He said that success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. He also said that success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak.
courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. He also said that you have enemies? Good. That means you have stood up for something sometime in your life. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimistic sees the opportunity in every difficulty. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. If we open a quarrel between past and present, we shall find that we have lost the future. What are the lessons we learn from Winston Churchill? He used every opportunity to improve his communication. He risked his life to write and communicate. He never gave up, even if he was forced out of office a couple of times. He became one of the most celebrated leaders of the United Kingdom because he was a great communicator. And he was recognized as one of the world's great communicators. Now, the lessons we learn from him is that we need to begin working on our communication wherever we are. He began his communication at his early 20s. That's fine. But for you, wherever you are right now, you should begin improving and working on your communication. Take risk and practice. And go out. Write. Even if it is writing for yourself, your close friends, and your families. I remember when I began writing in the early of 2000. But I seriously began writing blogs and articles since 2008. And if you read my blogs in 2008, I know you would laugh. You ridicule my writing. But I wanted to begin somewhere. I began there. Now I'm in a good position. Of course, I'm still on the learning curve and improving my writing skill almost every day. But I began somewhere. That's what I'm encouraging you. Please begin writing wherever you are. Write blogs, write articles. Join forums, discussion forums, and practice in improving your writing skill. And also use other opportunities. Go and join some organizations and practice your oral communication. And develop all-rounded communication ability, because communication, only using one aspect of communication is not enough. Even if you are great in terms of communicating orally, you need to improve your written communication. Reach out and accomplish your vision by communicating. So start from where you are today, learn from the experience of Winston Churchill, and go out, practice, and connect with people, and pursue your vision and accomplish it. Because you can't really succeed and accomplish your vision without communication. It is a key. Yes, you have great message. Yes, you have a vision. Yes, you have lots of talents and resources. But without communication, they can't help you achieve your dream. Our next great communicator is Les Brown. Les Brown, he was born in Miami, Florida, in an abandoned building, and he never knew his parents. And he was adopted by a kitchen worker and maid, and he grown up in a poverty-stricken Miami neighborhood. Because of his hyperactivity and non-stop jabber, Les was labeled as mentally retarded and placed in a special education classes designed for learning disabled students. But he made a very, very wise decision. What he did was, regardless of being labeled as mentally retarded, Les joined and attached himself to an award-winning speech class when he was a high school student, and talked his way out in becoming a world-class communicator. He had a successful career. Let me repeat this one. He had a very successful career in broadcasting. He was a politician, a member of the Ohio House of Representatives. He was a TV personality with a talk show. He had the Les Brown Show. He was named as one of the top 5 speakers in the world by Toastmasters International, and he is an accomplished author, and he speaks at venues packed with thousands of audience. He coaches speakers to gain their voice, and also runs a weekly radio program called Motivational Monday to inspire millions of people around the world. You can see from his quotations that he is a very articulate communicator. Here is his quotations. Shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you will land in the stars. If you look up, you get up. Other people's opinion of you doesn't have to become your reality. Life has no limitations except the one you make. Align yourself with people that you can learn from. People who want more out of life. People who are stretching and searching and seeking some high ground in life. Most people fail in life not because they aim too high and miss, but because they aim too low and make sure when you fail, you land on your back. If you can see, you can get up. It is not over until you win. Now let's talk about the lessons we learned from Les Brown. The first lesson is that he didn't have college diploma. He grew up in a very poor neighborhood and labeled as dumb. But he worked on his communication. That was a very smart decision. He went out to fight for his passion using his communication ability and achieved greatness because he is a great communicator. What are the lessons we learn individually from his life? You may not have education. You may be labeled as this or that. It doesn't matter. You may be at the wrong side of the fence. It doesn't matter. If you communicate and go out and reach and connect with people, you can win and realize your dream and serve the world. In conclusion, we talked about the 3 triads of communication. What are these 3 components of communication? Relate, connect, and listen. We also talked about the steps we should take to improve our communication. What are the 5 steps? We call them the 5 A's. We also learned from the experience of best communicators. We talked about Winston Churchill and Les Brown and what kind of lesson we should learn from their communication ability. Next week, we're going to have a wonderful interview. We bring you a great communicator, and we're going to talk about the different aspects of communication. Until I see you next week, have a wonderful time. Thank you for watching.